You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Today, we'll have the latest on the winter storm and how it's taking a toll on the 4 states and sweeping through the entire Midwest.
Tanya, we find ourselves right in the heart of it. Snow-covered 4 states, that's an understatement. We're going to have total amounts of snow depth from the Skywatch Weather Center.
And the discipline a group of workers face for missing their COVID-19 vaccination deadline.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Thanks for joining us for the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. I'm Tanya Bach. More overnight and early morning snow blow through the 4 states. We're going to start this morning with the latest as we head on over to Michael in the Skywatch Weather Center.
Not quite done as of yet, especially for the southern and eastern portions of our highlighted counties. We begin to see it taper off out to the west and the north. As a matter of fact, probably done with most of that for the rest of the day. Now, here's the thing. It's not going to feel like it's done, not because it's necessarily dropping out of the sky, but because the wind is so stiff that it's going to blow it off of any elevated buildings, houses, and trees for the duration of our Thursday. We'll also talk about what's formulating down to the south because it will play a substantial role in our weather for the rest of the day. As we transition over to KOAMnewsnow.com, remember that is your one-stop source for closings, whether it be especially colleges or schools. I'm pretty sure everybody has a good handle on that. But also to organization, churches, government activities, and businesses, all listed on there while closed for inclement weather, and it is an impressive list. It's been a long time since we've seen a list that long. When we talk about our snow depth numbers, that dark blue, that's in excess of 7-8 inches. The middle portion of the blue, that's about 4 to 6 inches, and with it drifting, don't be surprised if you don't see some drifts that honestly equal about 3 to 4 feet. We've got one in the backside of Television City that's sitting about 5 feet tall right now. And on top of that, I tell you what, it's not worth driving, and it's not worth even trying to bundle up when we have wind chills that are down this low in the negative numbers, and that's because this wind, it is substantial. We're talking about 30-mile-an-hour gusts that have been coming in intermittently. As we transition to the afternoon hours, while the west and the north are just about done, watch the south, especially that line from OKC to Tulsa along I-44, because it persists all the way from Thursday night into Friday morning. Won't really give up. That's why that expiration date for the winter storm warning is 3 a.m. on Friday. That's about when it should push off down to the south. But our temperatures don't go anywhere, Tanya. We're going to have snow on the ground all the way into next week.
All right.
Shout out to our road crews. They're doing an excellent job. It's just a case of that snow and the way it's blowing right now. It's hard to keep up with anything.
True that. And shout out to my morning crew staff that all made it in safely this morning.
You guys are the best.
Thank you guys.
You guys are truly the best.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Well, Joplin police urge people to stay off the roads and help first responders. Joplin road conditions deteriorated overnight and into the morning hours. JPD's first tip, stay at home if you can. The second, only call 911 for emergency situations to reduce strain on emergency workers.
You're involved in a crash and of course there's injuries, please dial 911. That's the quickest way to get EMS, law enforcement to the scene as quickly as possible. We just ask that, if it's not an emergency situation, there are no injuries, just dial our non-emergency number, the 417-623-3131, and we'll make sure and get a call entered and get an officer there to you just as quickly as we can.
Another tip, increase your follow distance from what it normally is as you may have trouble braking. Also begin braking earlier to guarantee you have enough time. Well, this video comes out of the Fort Scott area. The first round of snow and ice left behind several inches of precipitation there. That was just round 1 before the additional snowfall hit through this Thursday morning. And just east of Fort Scott, down Highway 54 to Nevada, Missouri, comes this video. As you can see, communities up in the northern part of our viewing area have been experiencing a decent amount of snow. Places around and north of the Nevada-Fort Scott line are up to about 7 to 8 inches since it first began. Oklahoma Department of Transportation workers have been out for the last 2 days to try and keep roads safe. ODOT has been asking drivers to keep an eye out for those vehicles and workers, especially on the interstate.
Those routes are, they're pretty much standard for every storm. The turnpike is handled by the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, and the Will Rogers Turnpike has a crew for each end of the turnpike that will go out there and treat it as well.
Cox-Barton County Hospital got a jump on its winter storm preparations and actually started last week. Some of those plans included transforming rooms at the Medical One clinic into bedrooms for staff who may need to stay. They've also made space in the hospital for employees who feel it may be too dangerous to leave the hospital during the storm. Officials say the anticipated staff staying in the hospital overnight. Well, on top of the snow and ice, we now have frigid cold temperatures all the way into the weekend, and that increases the risk of hypothermia for those who have to be outside and those who do not have a place to call home. The Carthage Crisis Center and Watered Gardens in Joplin is both open as warming centers. They both are and will remain open while it remains cold. Anyone outside for an extended period can suffer from hypothermia. Experts say one of the key warning signs is confusion or someone not acting like themselves. They add that alone is a danger, as the person suffering from hypothermia may not even be aware.
If you're just starting to get a little bit incoherent and you can get inside and get warmed up, that's excellent. But if you're not seeing significant changes or you're getting worse, definitely seek medical attention.
We'll have more on hypothermia risk and what the warming center means to one homeless man a little later in the show. When last year's snowstorm hit, power went down for millions of Americans, and this year utility providers have taken steps to avoid that happening again. Shannon Russo tells us what's being done to try and keep the lights on this time around.
With the February 2021 winter storm still on many people's minds, Oklahoma utility companies say they're better prepared this time around. In the last year, PSO says it's added 2 wind farms, both equipped to handle cold weather.
They're bringing quite a bit of power to the system, and the cold weather packages means that they'll be resilient in the kind of weather that we're getting ready to face.
OG&E, which primarily serves Oklahoma City, says it's also made changes, like enhancing power lines and adding what it calls smart technology.
It can identify when a circuit has gone out, and it can reroute power to a different circuit if another circuit is available to provide power.
Similar technology is already in play for PSO customers in Green Country. Wayne Green says the company now working to apply it more broadly across the system.
And also we have a better information about where the break is so that we can go deal with it.
While both companies remain optimistic with this upcoming storm, they still want people to be prepared for the unknown.
Both companies say that if you do lose power and have to leave your home for any reason, to check the road conditions and have an emergency kit in your car with things like an ice scraper, some blankets, and a first aid kit with things like jumper cables.
The good news, PSO and OG&E say there's enough supply to get through this week's weather.
Just in case you didn't believe your own eyes or freezing cold stinging your face, Puxatawny Phil agrees with this entire winter sticking around mess. Yesterday was Groundhog Day, and at Gobbler's Knob in Puxatawny, Pennsylvania, it was declared that Phil did indeed see his shadow. How did they have sun there? Predicting 6 more weeks of winter. Groundhog's Day goes back to 1887, making this year the 137th time the magical Phil has provided us with his prediction. Well, if he was here, he wouldn't have seen anything. Up next on the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14, Chef Anthony braves the cold to cook us some fajitas, warming us up here in the studio. You won't want to miss that. And later, how ghost guns are becoming an all too real problem. You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14.
President Biden heads off to New York to address the wave of gun violence plaguing U.S. cities. Illegal guns, they're a big part of the problem, especially what's known as ghost guns. They can be easily purchased, no background checks. Jeff Begrace with an exclusive interview with top federal officials in charge of getting those guns off our streets.
Dion, it's Houston Police. Let's do this thing.
If you're looking for a reason why crime is spiking,
keep hands I can see him. What are you doing?
The ATF says unregistered and untraceable homemade weapons are key. So-called ghost guns can be made on a 3D printer.
This is a ghost gun. We're going to try it out. It's something that you can produce on a printer that costs less than $200.
Earl Griffith, an ATF firearms officer, says a small conversion device like this one can turn a legal semi-automatic handgun into an illegal machine gun.
many rounds a minute was that?
So that was about 30 rounds.
30 rounds.
Yes.
So you essentially emptied the clip.
Emptied the magazine of 33 rounds, yeah.
Conversion parts are so easy to make that we watched as this 3D printer assembled one in about 45 minutes. Marvin Richardson is the acting director of the ATF.
How have ghost guns complicated the job of ATF agents?
You can buy a box of firearms parts and you can assemble those firearms together. And I've seen videos on YouTube where you can see people doing it in record time, 20, 23 minutes.
Last year, police in Chicago seized over 400 ghost guns, New York over 200. Richardson says so-called trigger pullers, criminals, and gang members using guns are well known to law enforcement.
So what we've learned is that those people that we go after have an average of 8 arrests prior to us having that contact with them.
8 arrests.
And in many instances, 8 violent criminal arrests.
Another part of the problem, the court system. A lot of it closed down at times during the pandemic. Law enforcement officials say they make an arrest. The suspect goes into the court system, but then comes right back out. Jeff Begay, CBS News, Washington.
All right, we're going to come back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Special guest in the studio with honestly some great food fit for a perfect winter supper. Chef Anthony's with us here in studio. We'll be back right after this.
Well, welcome back. We've got Chef Anthony from Pittsburgh High School joining us again this morning and on the early show with KOAM. We made some tasty omelets, but I'm really excited for this recipe. We're making fajitas.
Yes, we are. Some of my favorite. Well, let's start with a hot pan with a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of butter. We're going to throw garlic right into it because everybody loves a little bit of garlic. Some diced onions.
Gotta have onions.
Small diced green peppers. And we're going to give that a nice little toss around a little bit. And we're going to let those start to cook down. Now, I brought some very unique beef with us. This is locally raised, in Missouri. And it's available to purchase in Pittsburgh at Simon Market. You can also purchase it in Joplin at Price Cutter and Food for Less. It's really good, high quality beef. And I'm using a flank steak today because most people are scared of it.
There's no need to be afraid of flank steak.
No, take the flank steak, get it trimmed down real nice, cut it across the grain so that it's real short. So when you bite into it, you can actually pull it apart.
Okay, and that's why you do across the grain instead of with the grain.
Exactly. In most restaurants, they don't think about that. That's why when you go to some and you take a bite of your fajitas and it just pulls right out of it, it's because it's cut with the grain. So cut it across the grain, it pulls apart real easy. And I have our onions, garlic, everything's coming together. Our beef right on top.
Okay.
Now, I use my own little spice blend for my fajitas. And the breakdown recipe is on your website?
Yes, we'll have this posted later this morning with the recipe.
And this is granulated garlic, dry basil, lime zest, fresh red pepper flakes, and jalapenos, and then I run it through my spice grinder. And people shouldn't be afraid of, well, Chef, I don't have a spice grinder at home. Coffee grinders are like $9, if not a little bit less, at Walmart, and they're the exact same thing. So, and then I take this and sprinkle across the top. And if you take a whiff of that. How much spice
are you putting in there?
I'd say probably tablespoon and a half.
Tablespoon. That's delicious. You just have to keep the leftovers here.
It'll wake you up real quick.
Yeah.
And we're going to let this all marry together. Now, most places where you go and you get fajitas, you get flour tortillas. I like corn tortillas for their texture, and I think they stand up really well. So I brought corn tortillas with me today, and I brought the white corn.
But obviously get your preference.
Exactly.
Making your own.
Whatever you like. I always say practice and play around. Most people, they don't know what the tortillas are corn, and everybody's used to the taco shells. This makes it great. You can cut this steak down even smaller and turn it into a very beautiful taco.
How long or how do you want to cook all the redness out of your beef, or do you want to, is it good to leave a little bit, or?
Well, as thin as
What's
this
the
is
thought?
cut, it's not going to matter because it's really tender anyway. So if you cut it a little thicker, it's to your preference. Some people, I don't like the pink, they want well done. Some people, they like medium rare, like I do. So it
As
just,
do I, yes.
it just personal preference. But cut it thin so that it falls and pulls apart real nicely. And as you can see, it comes together real easy.
I can smell
This
that garlic in there too.
Oh,
and your
yeah.
seasoning.
This is great for Super Bowl tailgating with the Super Bowl right around the corner coming. This is great to do at home for friends, for the kids when they come home from school.
Michael, can you smell this over there in the Weather Center? Yeah, he's giving me a thumbs up.
And there we
that's
go.
delicious, fine.
Now, the key to finishing this off is just to put the lid on for just a few seconds. It gets a chance for everything to kind of pull itself together and all the flavors and moisture to go back inside. And then it'll come up. And I brought toppings with me. I just have some chopped iceberg lettuce and some cheddar cheese. And of course, some beautiful corn tortillas.
Awesome, awesome.
Even a pair of tongs for you to help yourself.
So you teach culinary arts at Pittsburgh High School. Are these some of the kind of recipes that you teach the kids how to make?
This is exactly what I teach the kids how to do. What I teach versus most culinary schools teach is I teach every student the opportunity how to cook for themselves. I teach them to braise, I teach them to bake, roast, pan fry, saute, the basic skills. Then they can take these skills and turn them into whatever they want them to be. So they can bake a cake, they can make fresh
More
bread.
than making just macaroni and cheese.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and as you can see, if that's just not about as beautiful as you can get.
No, that does look great.
And we'll roll that right out here onto the plate.
All right, and as we go to break, I'm going to go ahead and build one. But I'm looking forward to trying this. It's going to be really too hot to eat on air. But let's, ooh. A little bit of cheese and a little bit of lettuce. And bon appetit.
Yes.
All right, well, we're going to have you back next week. I don't know if you've decided what you're making again.
Next week, in honor of Valentine's Day, we're going to do compound butter, and we're going to have a special heart-shaped ribeye brought to us by our friends at the market.
This is good.
Well, good. I'm glad you enjoy.
Very good, and you can find this recipe on our website in just a little bit at KOAMnewsnow.com. Just click on the morning show page.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming in again. Can't wait to have you back again.
Oh, I can't wait.
We'll be right back.
Welcome to Science.
We take this time to honor this morning's four-state hero. Glenn Pearson of Fort Scott, Kansas served in the United States Navy from 1956 to 1962. A Navy boiler technician second class. We salute you, Glenn Pearson, this morning's four-state hero. And with that being said, and celebrating our four-state hero like we do each and every morning and each and every show on both KOAM and Fox 14, we have breaking news coming out this morning from Syria concerning U.S. Special Forces. President Joe Biden, recently tweeting out that that special force group had successfully conducted a counterterrorism mission in Syria. The leader who is targeted, ISIS leader, Abu Ibrahim al-Qurashi. If that name is familiar, he became the leader of ISIS after a former successful operation. That was the assassination of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Indeed, it was al-Qurashi who then took Baghdadi's place. Late last night, it came out that counterterrorism forces through the United States had conducted a raid in Syria. Although details were very sketchy, and throughout the morning, not much information was released. But once again, to reiterate, U.S. Special Forces, according to a tweet from President Joe Biden, successfully conducted a counterterrorism mission in Syria, resulting in the assassination of Abu Ibrahim al-Qurashi. Of course, we'll have more on this story as it develops through the KOAM news on Fox 14 and certainly on the KOAM News at Noon. President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, they are expected at the National Prayer Breakfast this morning. Obviously a very busy morning for them in the Situation Room as well. We've got a live shot, in fact, with the crowd in D.C. anticipating their arrival. Once again, that is a live shot coming out of the National Prayer Breakfast. But probably safe to say that the president and vice president right now are being debriefed on that U.S. Special Forces operation that resulted in the assassination of ISIS leader Abu Ibrahim al-Qurashi. So as we continue to update that story, let's transition now, take a look at the Skywatch Storm Tracker with the cloud cover dominating out to the west and to the north. But if we remove that, I've got some good news for you. That snow is just about over in those areas. That is not the case along and south of I-44. As a matter of fact, with the wind blowing the way it is, it's certainly made for treacherous weather conditions. We can actually take a live shot here of I-44 out by I-49, right there at the exchange, usually a very busy exchange for this time of the day. How about that? Hardly a headlight out there, and the ones that we have seen, they are just inching along. So I do appreciate that everybody's taking this very, very seriously. Now, as we look at our snow depth numbers, that dark blue indicating in excess of 7 to 9 inches. That medium blue, that's going to be about 6 to 8 as our numbers continue to pile up down to the south. And also, too, on top of that, we are trying to combat wind chill numbers that are going to stay in the negatives for most of the morning. In fact, even when we begin to hit, say noon to 2 o'clock, we're still going to be extremely cold. Now, speaking of that time frame, let's talk about what we've got cooking along and south of I-44, because those are going to be problematic all the way into tomorrow. As a matter of fact, the winter storm warnings for those areas have actually been extended to 3 a.m. tomorrow, because we've still got another 2 inches that are going to roll through right along the interstate, northeast Oklahoma, southern southwest Missouri, and all the way into northwest Arkansas. And after that, snow and ice, they don't go anywhere, folks. Single digits all the way into the weekend. We'll be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Welcome back to the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. It's currently 7:31. Today's top story, not only here in the 4 states, but across the entire Midwest, this winter storm we're mired in. And while the snow tapers off, the cold does not. Michael joins us now from the Skywatch Weather Center.
Tanya, you're exactly right about it tapering off. It's not a welcome relief for everybody, but earlier our tower cam at 7th and Rangeline showed the snow coming down sideways at the intersection. We've been able to back off that a little bit, but at the same point in time, we're going to reiterate safety first. There's absolutely no reason to be out if you can avoid it. Look at those snow-covered roads. And our road crews doing yeoman's work. It's just hard to keep up with the amount of wind and snow that we've received. There we are at one of our major thoroughfares. That's over I-44, mile marker 18, right by the I-49 exchange. And tell you what, you pick one of your slowest days of the year, travel days of the year, you're going to see more traffic than what we're seeing right now. So at least everybody is heeding those warnings for the most part. I know not everybody can, and just extra time out there. Still holding on to a fair amount of snow that's coming down through northeast Oklahoma, especially Delaware County, and then making its way from McDonald County into portions of Newton County, just south of Joplin right there, and pretty much hanging on to the snow, the eastern portion of southwest Missouri. Now out to the west, you're going to be like, no, Michael, it's still snowing. Well, honestly, that's going to be the result of the 30-mile-an-hour wind blowing it off elevated surfaces. That's our problem out there. The winter storm warnings for the south, those persist all the way until 3 a.m. tomorrow morning, because, watch the bottom of your screen here, it continually rolls in from OKC through Tulsa, through our counties, until we get into early Friday, and the temperatures going nowhere. I mean, nowhere.
Which is where we would love everyone to do is go nowhere. Stay home if you can.
Go nowhere. You know, even if you're like, oh, I can drive in this. Number one, no, you can't. Trust us. We all got here super early this morning. Number two, it's not worth trying to get out and even start your car if I tell you the wind chill right now is 6 below zero.
Hope you parked it in the right direction.
And for those of you that are essential personnel, please know that like we're halfway not joking. We are halfway joking. We know that you have jobs that require you to be there, and trust us, from all of us here at KOAM and Fox 14, we greatly appreciate your hard work and know that you treat safety first.
Yes. All right, we told you earlier about Puxatawny Phil predicting 6 more weeks of winter, and Mother Nature is already delivering. Naomi Ruckham has the latest on this major storm putting millions of Americans under winter weather alerts.
In Terre Haute, Indiana, first came the rain and then the snow. That's been the case for much of the Midwest, digging out yesterday as the storm continues today.
Since it rained all last night, like the bottom half inch is just pure slush.
We're supposed to get another 8 or 12 inches. Someone's trying to do it in stages.
Dashcam video caught a car spinning out of control along this Kansas road. In Missouri, Interstates 64 and 70 were both blocked due to semi-trucks, while buses and cars across dozens of states were seen struggling with the conditions.
Let the plows do their thing and then come out later on.
There's heightened concern in Texas, almost a year after a freeze there led to one of the nation's biggest blackouts and killed more than 200 people.
The expectation right now is not going to be something like we saw last year. It's much shorter duration. There doesn't seem to be an overlap between the cold and the rain.
Officials say changes made in the past year have made the power grid more reliable.
Weatherizing our fleet or the way we operate our grid, it really has put us in a solid position.
Up in Pittsburgh, they're preparing as if it's just another storm.
It's cold February. Get a shovel. Don't worry about it.
The National Weather Service says the snow and rain should move off the East Coast by Friday evening. Naomi Ruckham, CBS News.
According to FlightAware, there have already been more than 3,000 flights canceled today, 900 of them by Southwest. Preparations for the winter storm began as early as last week at Cox-Barton County Hospital. Some of those plans included transforming rooms at the Medical One Clinic into bedrooms for staff who may need to stay. They've also made space in the hospital for employees who feel it may be too dangerous to leave the hospital during the storm. Officials say they anticipated staff staying in the hospital overnight. Joplin police urge people to stay off the roads and help first responders. Joplin road conditions deteriorated overnight and into the morning hours. JPD's first tip, stay at home if you can. The second, only call 911 for emergency situations to reduce strain on emergency workers.
The crash and of course there's injuries, please dial 911. That's the quickest way to get EMS, law enforcement to the scene as quickly as possible. We just ask that, if it's not an emergency situation, there are no injuries, just dial our non-emergency number, the 417-623-3131, and we'll make sure and get a call entered and get an officer there to you just as quickly as we can.
Another tip, increase your follow distance from what it normally is, as you may have trouble braking. Also, begin braking earlier to guarantee you have enough time. We'll be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.
Vehicle prices.
A long history of smack talk between some fishing buddies has reached a new level. In fact, one of them bought an electronic billboard to let people know just how bad his friend is at fishing. Nick Broadway with the story behind it all.
Gang that lives near Brainerd goes fishing on the regular, taking one big trip every year. David V tells me there's a tradition of smack talk revolving around Troy, who seems to have some kind of angling curse.
He's been less than successful in previous trips.
He says it's normal for Troy to not catch a single fish for an entire outing. V told me a story about how one of their friends had a rough night and wound up sleeping on the boat.
He ended up sleeping through most of the day, but at one point, Troy is still at 0 fish. Chappie wakes up, sees his bobber down, catches a fish, shoves it in Troy's face, like, ha-ha, and then goes back to sleep.
Chappie's one fish beat Troy's no fish. This didn't stop Troy from taking smack talk to the next step, sending all his fishing buddies this video.
You guys really think you're going to beat Troy on your ice fishing trip this year?
That's Christopher McDonald of Happy Gilmore fame. Troy arranged this personalized message
and sent it out just randomly. And I'm like, well, I got to respond to him.
Now they're going the extra mile. Mile marker 36 to be exact, along Highway 371. David put up this electronic billboard with Troy's face, saying, "This is Troy. He sucks at fishing. Talk smack to him at troysucks2@gmail.com.
Troy sucks and Troy sucks one word already taken.
They already got dozens of emails, some giving advice, some offering lessons, and others swarming him with even more smack talk.
Some were completely savage. One of them, the headline was
To top this off, it went up the same weekend of Brainerd's big fishing tournament. So it's believed about 20,000 visitors now know Troy sucks at fishing.
He's a fine fisherman, right? I won't tell him that to his face, but he's a fine fisherman, right? And he knows how to catch a fish and all that stuff. But just if there's bad luck on the boat or in the fish house, Troy's got it.
As for Troy himself, David says he's been a real good sport. But David says he's going to wear a helmet next year, anticipating revenge from his fishing buddy.
Hey, that's what friends are for. Shout out to Dionne Warwick, nominated for the 2022 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We'll be back with more KOAM Morning News right after this.
At Area.
As Americans fork over more and more of their income to pay for rising premiums and deductibles on their health insurance, the major insurance companies are raking in record profits. We asked Gabe Cohen to follow the money and ask whether insurers are putting profits ahead of patients.
As inflation and pandemic hardships weigh on the wallets of Americans, healthcare costs keep climbing.
It doesn't cover 100% until we meet $12,000 out of pocket first.
For Jessica Jones and her family, that's devastating, with her son battling a chronic heart disease.
Making choices. Are we going to pay this medical bill or are we going to keep the lights on? My husband and I had conversations about divorcing so that we could get Medicaid for our son.
According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, the price of an employer-sponsored family policy is up 47% since 2011, outpacing wages and inflation, meaning premiums and deductibles now eat up more of the average family's income, 11.6% as of 2020. A December poll found 46% of insured adults struggle to afford out-of-pocket costs, and 29% have not taken medicine as prescribed because it's too expensive.
They have health insurance, but they still can't afford to get the health care that they need.
Yet health insurance companies are making record profits. For United Health, the largest insurer in the U.S., net earnings have surged since 2015, reaching $17.7 billion last year, as their business has rapidly expanded into other healthcare sectors.
Not bringing down the cost of care, not giving people relief from premiums and out-of-pockets, but enriching their shareholders and their top executives.
The Affordable Care Act includes a rule that insurance companies must spend at least 80% of the money made from premiums on healthcare costs and improvements. The other 20% can go to administration, marketing, and profits. Last year, United Health returned more than $5 billion in dividends to shareholders, and other companies have done the same.
But if you want to talk about the drivers and why deductibles are up, health insurance company profits, they're a piece of it, but a pretty small piece of it.
It's part of a bigger debate about healthcare spending, which has soared in recent years. Prices set by providers like hospitals, doctors, and pharmaceutical companies are going up, even as fewer Americans have accessed medical services during the pandemic. Administrative costs alone make up more than a quarter of U.S. healthcare spending.
The for-profit companies are taking on an ever greater role within the U.S. healthcare system.
It's a complex issue, but for Jessica Jones, it's simple.
If the cost goes up, we could lose everything at this point.
We'll be right back with more after this, but first let's take a look at the market prices before the opening bell.
Kansas Day at 9, right here on Fox 14.
Last night, while we continued to watch snow cover the 4 states, insert 7th and range line here, I knew it was going to show up. Last night, while we continued to watch snow cover the 4 states, they have set a new record for weddings in Las Vegas. As a matter of fact, the entire county expecting a large number of services throughout the entire month. The reason? It's all about the number 2 in the calendar.
We hereby declare February 2022 as wedding month in Clark County, because forever happens here.
The Clark County Commission officially declaring this the inaugural wedding month, anticipating some potentially record-breaking numbers with 2/2/22, Valentine's Day, and the big one this year, 2/22/22, which happens to fall on a Tuesday.
The chapels are telling me that they're already booked. They're actually referring people to other chapels.
But February 2nd still bringing plenty of lovebirds to Las Vegas, like this couple from Orlando sneaking in their wedding while visiting for a friend's 40th birthday.
Congratulations, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
The date 2222, which I think is drawing a lot of people out. And we had an opportunity, and so we took it.
Just 2 blocks down the road from the Marriage License Bureau, the Vegas Weddings Chapel, with a lot of love in the air today.
With this ring, I thee wed.
Every single one of our venues at this location, which we have 3 venues, not including our drive-through as well as walk-up window, they're completely full all day.
So how popular is the month of February this year? Well, the Clark County Clerk says 2/22/22 could be the busiest wedding day ever. That record currently belongs to 7707. Sometime in February, Clark County also expecting to issue its 5 millionth marriage license since the county's founding in 1909. But not saying how close they are so that it remains a surprise.
But I've definitely gotten inquiries that you can tell people are trying to make the timing work for them.
With weddings typically making up 4% of annual visitors to Las Vegas, generating 18,000 jobs and $2.5 billion, the industry happy to have people back again, especially on days filled with the number 2.
I think if we get married today, everything's going to be much more beautiful, much more fruitful for our future.
From the wedding capital of the world.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm Brett Forrest reporting.
It's an NBA player yesterday on 2/2/22 who wears number 22. He had 2 steals, 2 fouls, 2 blocks, and he shot 22% from the floor. Couldn't make that up. All right, let's take a live look outside of Television City, where once again the best thing to do is to stay inside. If you're curious about organization, churches, businesses, and of course the all-important schools, you can go to KOAMnewsnow.com. That's KOAMnewsnow.com, and you can get right to our closing page right there. We keep that updated throughout the entire day. Now, we're starting to taper off a little bit, especially for the western and northern portion of the 4 states. That's without our cloud cover. We're still hanging on to that definitive line from the southwest up to the northeast, throughout northeast Oklahoma, and into southern southwest Missouri. And I want to point that area out because there's still a whole lot more to come, specifically along and south of I-44, that's going to dominate our highlighted counties for the rest of the afternoon. But once again, you live to the west, you live to the north, those snow depth numbers are just about complete for you. Doesn't mean the roads are good for traveling, but we'll kind of put our snow depth right there in between, say, 6 to 9 inches in that darker blue is about what the reports are coming in at. Now, we've got to fight the bitter cold. Wind chills right now remain in the negatives. So we have dropped as low as -7 out in Yates Center. And also, too, snow drifts are a serious problem because as it comes in from the north-northeast, will gust from 25 to 30 miles per hour today. As we push into the afternoon hours, once again, watch that OKC to Tulsa line, because that dominates our southern portion of the 4 states. That's why the winter storm warnings for northeast Oklahoma and northwest Arkansas do not give up until 3 a.m. on Friday. Now a 7-day forecast. Now that everything's on the ground, it doesn't go anywhere as we've got freezing temps all the way into the weekend. Anticipate those single-digit overnight lows and negative wind chills all the way into Saturday. We'll be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.
At U.S. Cellular.
Some additional information coming out about our earlier breaking news is President Biden tweeting earlier this morning that U.S. Special Forces had successfully completed an operation in northwestern Syria, resulting in the execution of Abu Ibrahim al-Qurashi. Qurashi, currently the leader of ISIS, taking the mantle from al-Baghdadi after he was killed in October of 2019. Similar to the Baghdadi raid, this does not appear to be drone-led, and while the details still have yet to come forward, it does appear that U.S. Special Forces, led by Delta Force, conducted this as a ground operation. As we get more of these details, of course, we will bring them to you. One final look at the weather before we get back to Tanya with Future Track showing the snow sticking around for the afternoon and evening hours along and south of I-44. That's why that winter storm warning lasts all the way until 3 a.m. on Friday. And for those of you that don't have the snow, it's still going to come off of buildings and elevated surfaces because of our high wind, and it's just frigid cold outside. And it will stay that way until we finally get back into the double digits for overnight lows. Oh, by the way, that's not until Saturday.
Oh, wow. Well, February 3rd marks the birthday of Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell, the first woman to earn a medical degree in the United States in 1849. That's why today is National Women Physicians Day. Pretty cool. Statistics show female doctors gradually increased in the last 2 decades. 35% of physicians are women. Well, National Women's Physicians Day recognizes the female doctors who have paved the way for others and also calls on more progress to be made. The communities all over the country are asked to use the hashtags #IamBlackwell and Women Docs Inspire to celebrate the day.
From just my previous life in healthcare, I can't fathom. I know at some point, I know there was a time where we didn't have female physicians. It's just crazy to think that that time existed, seeing as how important they've been in not only my life, but my family's life as well.
Speaking of women in healthcare, tomorrow is National Go Red for Women Day.
It is indeed. By the way, that was shout out to you, Jackie. Thank you so much for letting us put the good in your morning. We will be back with more news and weather when we see you at noon.
Have a great morning and an even better day.